biggest secret that absolutely nobody knows about, and will change everything for humankind.
Okay. Do you see the problem yet?
It's a huge secret. I mean, big. I mean, like, so big that the only thing that could rival it in scope would be aliens landing and talking to us about our ways.
But you believe that's an everyday thing. I mean, you think aliens are walking around among us anyway. Remember the Jew thing? Remember the Martians who took over the world?
Of course!
Did you suffer a stroke recently? I would have expected that to make you smart.
This apocalypse is yet to reach the masses. It will likely be several years before this truth surfaces as a fact.
Okay, so how do you know about it?
Nonetheless, it is the truth, and it will destroy all of our religions at once, unless they are able to adapt to the harsh reality that a great civilization existed on Earth a long, long time ago.
Okay. Okay, well, so much for that whole "this is just an idea I'm throwing out there" thing. You're saying that this is the truth. Okay, everyone remember that.
Whatever remnants of the lost civilization of Atlantis are frozen under approximately 1 to 2 vertical miles of ice of Greenland. And the ice is melting. You see, when Atlantis sunk, it didn't actually sink, it froze.
Ow!
It was almost completely encased in ice, and while it's still likely that many of the man-made things were destroyed, however, there is still ample amount of evidence hiding under that ice, waiting to be rediscovered as global warming melts the ice away, revealing our ancient past.
So there is plenty of evidence, but it hasn't been found yet. Okay, so how do you know about it? I'd facepalm again, but that last one really hurt. Maybe I should start listening to cool hard logic and use an oven mitt. I don't know.
What I know, without the shadow of a doubt, which truly I can only attribute at this time to deep spiritual knowing and a logic that just says all of the pieces fit, is that Atlantis existed on a continent of its own, and that continent is what we today know as Greenland. So what evidence...
No, go back to that last one, Jordan. You said you know without the shadow of a doubt. Because you have a spiritual knowing. And because all pieces fit and they don't, I'll get back to that. You know this without the shadow of a doubt, despite the fact that there is not one piece of information leading to this conclusion, but because you have a deep spiritual knowing.
So what evidence do I have to support these bold claims, you may ask?
You already said you don't have any. You said you believe this. No, scratch that. No, without the shadow of a doubt. Because you have a deep spiritual knowing, which is just another way of saying that you're making this whole thing up. But you don't have the honesty to admit that.
No, the ice hasn't thawed enough to have any physical evidence, actually.
Exactly.
We have some other items at our disposal. From the word of Thoth on the shape and description of the continent of Atlantis.
Please refer to Why Do People Laugh at Spirit Science, Part 9. Where I deal with the Atlantis myth and explain how Plato made it up and that the story was then hijacked by woo peddlers in the 19th century. This is stupid. Atlantis wasn't a real place. It was fictional. This is stupid for that reason, and it's stupid because we know that Greenland can't be Atlantis. Greenland has been frozen, not for a couple of thousand years, or 9,000 years, or 13,000 years, or whatever. It's been frozen for well over 100,000 years, and we know that because that's how old the ice is. Glacier ice contains visible layers of impurities, the compositions of which depend on the conditions when it was frozen. Since the conditions vary with the seasons, these layers can be used for dating purposes, just like tree rings. Ice cores from, you guessed it, Greenland are used at the Center for Ice and Climate at the Niels Bohr Institute at the University of Copenhagen to study climate change, as the impurities in the ice includes air bubbles. An air bubble from a layer deposited, say 20,000 years ago, will tell us about the contents of the atmosphere at that time. The NGRIP ice core, which is 3,085 meters long, contains a record of these conditions over the last 123,000 years. In other words, it's not just that there's no evidence supporting what you know without the shadow of a doubt. What you know without the shadow of a doubt is actually falsified by the evidence we do have. As usual, you're too lazy to actually investigate anything.
That's all I got. Enjoy the research, and not to mention talking about this with your friends.
What research?
If they call you crazy, don't worry, you're not.
No, not necessarily. You are, however, gullible and stupid.
I am authorized by myself to state that despite these bold claims as hard truths, they are still only but theories in my head.
Those aren't theories. Well, if you mean theory in the colloquial sense, in other words, some shit I just made up, then yeah, it is. But you said you know it without the shadow of a doubt, remember?
But it's one of those things that I just have a feeling on that is too real for me to not make a post about its legitimacy.
How it feels to you is irrelevant to its legitimacy.
Sorry, I know that's typically not how science works.
It's never how science works.
Though that's also how science progresses.
No, it isn't.
Einstein made a lot of claims before he actually demonstrated anything, and he was right about the things he saw.
But unlike you, he didn't claim to know without the shadow of a doubt that it is the truth. He could present a logical, rational reason why he thinks his hypothesis, and that's initially what it was, deserved consideration and should be tested. And even after it was tested and confirmed, he still didn't say he knows without the shadow of a doubt. And that's an important lesson to people who want to be good critical thinkers. People who claim to know without the shadow of a doubt instead of presenting the reason why they have been convinced, so that you can actually check it for yourself and see that yes, this is rational, this is logical, it does hold up. They're always wrong. See ya.